And welcome to the Culture Swally, a podcast dedicated to Scottish news and pop culture. I am Nicky Kemp of the Clan Kemp. I was born in 1981 in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary in Aberdeen. And I'm sad to say I'm not immortal, but I am joined by Greg. How are you today, Greg?
Very well. I was born Greg McPhee of the Clan McPhee in July 1978 in Stobhill Hospital in the north of Glasgow. And I too am not immortal, unfortunately.
I don't know, would you want to be immortal? I think we can discuss that later on. How's everything going with you this week? Anything exciting been happening in your world? It's been snowing all week. In fact, it hasn't been snowing all week here. It snowed last weekend, and I think the snow stopped on Monday, but it's still snow outside. It's been like -2, -3 every day, so the snow hasn't actually shifted. So although it hasn't snowed since I think Monday, it's still very snowy.
You won't be surprised to hear that there's no snow in Dubai. In fact, the weather here is starting to creep up a wee bit, temperature-wise. It's getting warmer. It has been foggy in the mornings, but otherwise hot and sunny here. Hot and sunny every day, hot and sunny. So, although I was going to say, I have been watching with interest all the snow pornography that my friends back in the UK have been posting on Facebook. Sledging, snowmen, snowball fights, cars stuck in the snow, lorries stuck. I saw a video of a woman in Edinburgh who appears to push a milk lorry single-handed up a street in Dunfermline and apparently can look forward to free milk for a whole year.
Well, speaking of which, shall we have a look at some news from Scotland this week?
Absolutely.
Hello, this is the Outer Hebrides Broadcasting Corporation, and here is what's been going on in the news.
Would you like to go first this week?
Yeah, I can. I'll go first this week. Now, I became a vegetarian nearly a year ago now. Pescatarian, I would say. I still eat fish, but I stopped eating meat. And one thing that I do miss, and I missed it when I was in Dubai at Christmas, and I used to love chicken katsu curry from Wagamama. So we went to Wagamama one night, and I did have the vegan katsu curry, which was basically sweet potato breaded with the katsu sauce. Not quite the same, but it was nice enough. But it was nice, but it wasn't the same, But however, there is a Glasgow Japanese restaurant which is now serving square sausage katsu curry. It's believed that Koshi in Glasgow's West End, I think, was the first ever restaurant to serve up haggis sushi, and now they're doing square sausage katsu curry. So katsu curry has become quite a popular dish in recent years. I think everywhere. It does say in the article in Glasgow, but this is from Glasgow Live, so I guess they're going to be quite biased in terms of this. It's that as the demand for katsu grows, more and more restaurants are trying to put their own twist onto it. So, it's in Shawlands, this restaurant. They've taken things a little further and are now using square sausage katsu curry. For Burns Night, the restaurant decided to celebrate the life of Robbie Burns, and they did a haggis katsu curry, a vegan haggis katsu curry. See, that would have been perfect for me, actually. And the square sausage katsu curry. So it was a massive success, and the restaurant is already gaining a reputation for fusing daring Scottish Japanese dishes. As it says, they were the first ever restaurant to bring haggis sushi to the table. So apparently they're going to, the article just effectively ends with, will you be ordering square sausage katsu curry from Glasgow? Let us know in the comments below. There's no comments in the article, so we don't know. Would you order square sausage katsu curry?
I would give it a try, I think. I would try that. I like square sausage, right? I do like it, but it's not something that you can eat very often because it can be quite dry. So unless you've got hundreds of HP sauce or you've got beans on your plate or whatever, it can be, or you've got loads of butter and sauce on your roll that you're rolling square sausage. I mean, I think, yeah, I'd give it a try. I mean, if it's katsu curry, there's going to be plenty of sauce and things. So why not? I'll try anything once. You can't try it because you're off meat, as you just...
I don't think I would try it anyway because, as I've mentioned before, I've never been a big fan of square sausage. It tends to give me heartburn. And I can't understand it. I could eat link sausages. I could eat a whole pack of link sausages and have no ill effects whatsoever. Used to do that many an occasion. But if I had a square sausage, I'd get raging heartburn.
Yeah.
Not sure why.
I mean, there is quite a lot of like seasoning and stuff in the square sausage, and it's dry. You know what I mean? Compared to like a link, it's really dry. I feel like we've had quite a lot of stories about sort of subverted Scottish food since we started the Swally, haven't we?
Well, we have. We've had obviously there was the famous square sausage painting. There was the. In fact, the other day, it was when we recorded the last episode, I came out of the room and my wife had just come back in. She'd been out for a run. And she said, I'm just listening about the sausage roll. And I was like, what? She's like, the sausage roll. I was like, what are you on about? And she's like, I'm listening to your podcast. You're going on about a sausage roll. I was like, right, well, what episode is it? I don't know. I was like, well, what are we reviewing? I don't know. I'm just up to the sausage roll. I was like, yeah, I can't remember which one this was. So it turned out, she was like, it's something from 2018. I was like, okay, so that must be Caliber. Okay, right. Sausage roll? And she went, yes, Greg's. And I was like, yeah, I know I do a podcast with Greg. What was this about the sausage roll? The woman with the tattoo on her arse. And I was like, oh, right. Why didn't you lead with that?
That's what they call burying the lead, I think, in media. I mean, even like as far back as maybe the Still Game one, like the first one we did, there was a story about some kind of iron brew sauce. I can't remember what it was on, but somebody in Fife was doing like an iron brew sauce or something there.
Yeah, that was one of the first we did. Was it not? They were using iron brew in the batter or something,
Yeah.
or in the sauce, or that's true. And then we did have the other one. We had somebody was deep frying
Square sausage. Because we couldn't believe that it had taken them so long to get round. Oh, and pickled onions as well. They were frying pickled onions.
That was it. That's what I was trying to remember. Pickled onions. But yes, that's right. Deep fried square sausage and pickled onions. So a square sausage probably is the sort of unofficial food of the Swally. But it's unfortunate because I can't eat it because I don't eat meat and it gives me heartburn anyway. So all the more for you, Greg. Hooray. So that covers my first news story. What about yourself? What have you seen this week in Scotland?
Well, I know like last week I had said I was going to follow your example from the episode before and try and find a sort of amusing / a little unpleasant whatever story, and also a nice story. But I'm afraid this week I've only got amusing stories. I don't have any nice stories, and the first one is pretty unpleasant. So it's from the Daily Record on this. It's actually on the 7th of January. I'm not sure how we've missed this one in previous episodes, but the headline reads: Pervert picture framer convicted of flashing his genitals, but claimed they'd fallen out of his pants. You have to insert your speech marks there. This is Alexander MacLeod, funnily enough. Exposed himself and asked his victim if he wanted to perform a sex act on him. So Alexander, I bet he doesn't work there anymore, but he used to work at Johnston Art and Framing, November the 5th last year. The victim, who isn't, his identity's not being disclosed because he's got special needs. He entered the store, which is on the High Street in Johnston, in Renfrewshire, if you need any pictures framed, at around 10 o'clock on the day in question, and he asked if he could put a poster up in the door. MacLeod said he could, and then he asked his victim to watch the shop for him. He checked to see if anyone was coming into the shop, and then he walked to the back of the store, noticing that MacLeod was hiding in an alcove. MacLeod had his trousers at his ankles and was exposing himself to the victim before he asked if he wanted to perform a sex act on him. But the victim replied, "I'm not gay, mate," and left before telling his friend, who was putting posters up in other shops in the street. The court heard the pair went to the store to confront MacLeod, who then claimed he had been fixing himself and his genitals had simply fallen out of his pants. I mean, this happens all the time, doesn't it? MacLeod then called his partner to say that men were causing problems in the shop, and his partner called the police. But it was he who ended up being arrested and going on trial over the claims at Paisley Sheriff Court. He was convicted of exposing his genitals in a sexual manner to the man with the intention that he would see them, handling himself, I don't know why that's funny, and making a sexual remark to the man, in breach of Section 8 of the Sexual Offences Scotland Act of 2009. Sentence was deferred for background reports to be prepared And MacLeod, formerly of Kirkintilloch in West Dunbartonshire, but he now lives in Troon, he returned to the dock on Tuesday to learn his fate. Sheriff David Pender said the victim of this offence suffered from some difficulties. From what I remember, this would have been very traumatic for him. I would have imposed a community payback order with unpaid work, but you're not able to do unpaid work, so I guess he's still opening the shop every day to frame pictures, although I can't imagine he's getting an awful lot of business. Now that this has been in the paper. He's been told to cough up £500 over what the judge termed a stupid offence, but he wasn't placed on the sex offenders register. So one could argue that he is lucky that he wasn't placed in the sex offenders register, but I think the fact that the town that he lives in, his shop, and the location of the shop and his name probably have given all the information that would be on the sex offenders register anyway. So what, your bollocks ever fallen out when you've been handling yourself in public?
Not that I can think of, no. I mean, we used to have that friend that back in the day, he would get his bollocks out a lot, the Little John's window guy. But I can honestly say nothing's ever fallen out whilst I've been adjusting myself. And I'm usually quite discreet about adjusting myself as well. So what do we think's happened here? Because somebody's obviously not telling the truth. Do we think it is the guy? Who do you believe in this instance?
I think I've got to give the benefit of the doubt to the person who made the complaint, to be honest, because if we go back to earlier in the article, he was described, like, MacLeod is described as hiding in an alcove with his trousers at his ankles and exposed. Now, I guess if we want to be devil's advocate, he's asked this guy to look after the shop for a minute. He's gone off to an alcove. The guy's gone looking for him. It isn't clear why. Maybe he just went off to have a wank. Maybe that's why he wanted the guy to look after the shop for him. Maybe he had been thinking sexy thoughts all morning. Couldn't contain himself any longer. This poor guy's come in and said, and it's okay if I put a poster up, mate. And he saw an opportunity. So he said, yeah, but can you look after the shop for me for 5 minutes? Gone to his little wanking alcove at the back of the shop. About to kind of bang one out. The guy's unfortunately come round. Maybe MacLeod has said, do you want to suck us off or something, as a joke, and the guy is I don't know, maybe he's trying to diffuse the situation. A sort of ill-advised attempt to diffuse a situation. I've been caught having a wank. I know what I'll do. I'll try and lighten the moment, because this guy will know that I'm only joking when I say, do you want to suck me off, or do you want to wank me off, whatever. And the guy's been like, I'm no gay, mate, and then gone and told his pal, and maybe it's escalated. I have no idea. I don't think it's up to us to litigate this, because it's clearly been litigated already by qualified people. But if we're just talking here, I'm just, maybe that's what's happened.
That sounds fair enough. It's the best explanation that I can think of or come up with. I don't know.
Of course, the alternative explanation is it happened exactly as it's described in the paper, and he's a dirty picture framing bastard who deserves to cough up £500 and is lucky that he's not on the sex offenders register.
Yeah, very true. Well, that's a heartwarming tale. Thank you very much.
It's no biker church, I'll tell you that anyway.
It's not, no. I think another Swally trope that we have, to maybe get a list of these together. So we have Falkirk, we have Square Sausage, and this isn't really a trope, but it just reminded me of a previous story that we had done on the Swally. So I don't know if you remember a story from a few episodes ago. It was about a 70-year-old man who had over 200 convictions.
Yes.
Yeah, from Falkirk.
Falkirk.
Yeah. So
yeah.
This isn't from Falkirk this week. This is from Aberdeen, this story. So it's from the Aberdeen Evening Express. And the headline just reminded me of James from Falkirk, because the headline reads, Aberdeen man who stole Gekko from pet shop had 144 previous convictions. A serial offender who stole a Gekko has been slammed by a sheriff as having one of the worst records she'd ever seen, with 144 previous convictions. Alexander Sorry appeared in Aberdeen Sheriff Court, and he was jailed for stealing a Gekko from pets at home. His defence of stealing the Gekko was that he panicked after the lizard became stuck to his hand. He pled guilty to stealing a live Gekko from the shop, and he was jailed for 10 months, along with other offences that he was charged with. So he's had 144 previous convictions, and it's one of the worst records the sheriff says she's ever seen. just like to point out, as far as the Gekko's concerned, he's alive and well. So the Gekko's okay. But his explanation was that he was in the pet shop and he'd opened up the Gekko tank, as you do when you're walking around a pet shop, and he stuck his hand in, but when he put his hand in, the Gekko jumped on him and stuck onto his hand. So he panicked. And of course, rather than get a member of staff or try and calm down or find out what we should do in this situation, he just put his hand in his pocket and ran off to another pet shop. So I'm presuming he's gone to another pet shop to try and sell this Gekko.
Hey.
So the sheriff actually said, I'm assuming that he was drunk or under the influence of something. You genuinely could not make this up. This has to be a comedy routine. So, so it must be bad for the sheriff to say that. So this happened at 10:45 a.m. when staff noticed him acting suspiciously in the shop. They then noticed one of the tank's lids was open and reviewed the CCTV and saw him reach into the tank and take something from it. Then he put his hand in his pocket and he was struggling to keep his hand in his pocket. So I wonder if, much like Mr. MacLeod, staff might have think he was fiddling with himself if he's jiggling about with his hand, but actually had a Gekko in there. So maybe our picture framer, maybe he was just looking for his Gekko or something. So police caught up with him and he claimed that he'd taken the animal to another pet shop, but when they got to the other pet shop, they couldn't find any trace of this Gekko. So I don't know how they know it's alive and well now. The Gekko was valued at £35. That's quite expensive for a Gekko. Along with the Gekko theft, he was charged with... Some of these incidents are great, he was also charged with stealing a wheel from a £500 bicycle, threatening a man, stealing alcohol from Key Store Express, Grampian Road, Aberdeen, throwing shopping baskets at staff in Tesco Express on Union Street, and he was also sentenced over stealing a toy football table and reusable shopping bags from Toys R Us in Union Square. So yeah, he's got 11 months in jail to have a little think about what he's done and maybe dream about getting a new Gekko. That's quite an impressive convictions. I think the one, my favourite, is throwing shopping baskets at staff in Tesco Express. Why? And stealing reusable shopping bags from Toys R Us. Is there a big... market for reusable shopping bags in the black market now?
I mean, it's possible because a shopping bag is like 5p in the UK, I think now. And so whenever I'm in the UK and I nip to the supermarket, I always forget to take like a bag for life or something with me. So I always end up buying a bag for life like every time. So maybe it's got a wee racket going. Selling I don't know how much a Toys R Us shopping bag would be, but if like a regular plastic bag's 5p, you got to think it'd be at least 10 or 15p, right? So if he's stealing them and selling them for say 5p, it's 100% profit.
He's living the high life. He's a high roller if he's selling those shopping bags for that much. I just saw the headline. I guess it was about stealing the Gekko that I found amusing, but when you get into his 144 previous convictions, that's quite impressive.
What time of the year did it happen? Does it say?
No, it doesn't actually mention when it was.
Imagine that you're that Gekko, right? And you're used to life in your carefully temperature-controlled tank. You're nice and warm. And the next thing you know, you're ripped roughly from your little domicile and stuffed into some guy's pocket and then exposed to the northeast of Scotland elements. I'm glad that you'd told us that the Gekko's still alive, because it could have been forgiven of taking a fucking heart attack.
That's true, yeah, and I think that's the main concern, that the Gekko is alive and well. We don't know his name, we don't know where he is now, but he was alive and well, so we're happy to report that. But you're right, it's, shame for the poor Gekko. You're lucky, yeah. You're lucky you didn't suffer a worse fate. So, what else have you seen this week?
I think this is a good one, and it's a lot of our listeners will probably be familiar with this story because, I mean, it was a Welsh fella that I'm friends with here in Dubai that showed it to me last week. I hadn't seen it yet, so it's obviously gone a bit viral. But this story is about the pundit Bobby Bulloch, Bulloch, who describes himself as an actor on Twitter. He's recently been commentating for Hamilton Accies. When they played Ross County a few weeks ago, he was late getting back on the microphone after the second half started because he had been to the bathroom. But anyway, I'll read you. Basically, Bobby comes back. The second half's been on for a minute or two, and he says, "Oh, so sorry about I hadn't pressed the button. I went away for a jobby at half time. Excuse my term of language. I've not pressed the wee button when I came back. So apologies to anybody who hasn't heard me this second half," and he chuckles a wee bit. His co-commentator says, "Are you speaking in rhyming vernacular there?" Before adding, "Apologies if you deem that bad language, viewers." Bobby adds, "Yeah, sorry. It was just a wee bit of poop. I was a wee bit late back over because I had to squeeze quite a bit. Sorry, I'll just change the subject and get back to the match, but I forgot to press my wee button. So I'm delighted to be back with you all." So Bobby was fired by Hamilton Accies after that game. They were furious with him. He himself has gone on to social media to react to his dismissal. He's been on Twitter. Bizarrely, the other night he tweeted, "I just need a jobby," and "We all poo" with the hashtag Free Bobby Bullock. He's been retweeted a few times. The video and the audio of the moment is all over social media. Ironically, he appeared as the bad guy in the Christmas pantomime of Jack and the Beanstalk, which was supported by Hamilton Accies at Christmas, and they streamed it online. The club streamed it online. But he's enjoying the reaction to his viral gaffe. He's clearly a bit of an attention seeker, and it's brought him a wee bit of fame. The guy that he was commentating with is called Tony Haggerty. He was very apologetic. But yeah, people on Twitter were supporting him, but equally a lot of people were condemning him as well for the use of the word jobby, which we've sort of touched on this before. People are just a bit sensitive these days, don't you think?
Obviously, I'd read about this story, and a big Scottish football fan and follow a lot of Scottish people on Twitter and stuff. So I had seen this story and I'd read about it in the paper. And I do think it's ridiculous. It's jobby. It's, he came back and okay, I agree. It's not so much the word for me. It is a bit unprofessional because obviously I watch the Red TV, the Aberdeen games live every week. And there's a commentator duo that commentate on the games. One of them said, "I'm sorry, I'm late. I've just been for a jobby." I would burst out laughing and I'd be thinking, did I hear that right? What's he said? But it's funny. It's not worth sacking someone over. I agree. If he'd come back and he said, "I've just had a massive shite. It was fucking stinking. Don't go in the toilets if I were you," then I can agree. Or if he'd come back and gone into great detail about how I had to curl one out. But he's just come back and said, "I just had a jobby."
Well, somebody started a petition through the website change.org to reinstate Bobby Bullock. It says, in capital letters, "Defend free speech and see Bobby Bullock reinstated as commentator at Hamilton Accies FC, back into capital letters. Join the lobby, free the jobby." I mean, that's obviously funny. This defend free speech is taking it a bit far, because it's not like Bobby was making a perhaps unpopular political opinion on the on Hamilton Accies commentary. He did just say that he was late back because he had been for a jobby.
Yeah, I think in this instance it is best to just come up with some other excuse or why you're late back. But he's obviously just been honest and just been for a jobby.
Will you be joining the lobby?
No, I don't really care, to be honest. I feel sorry for the guy, but I'm sure he's been on a few shows and things like that on the back of this. So I don't think sod it. Yeah, I'll sign the petition. Why not? What is it? Change.org jobby.
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly. In case anybody feels, I just clicked on it and it says this site cannot be reached. So it's been taken down already.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess as much as there are a lot of people who get very sensitive about such things, there's also a lot of really indignant people in the world now who would feel very strongly about Bobby's right to discuss his bowel movements on television. He'll probably get a job out of it. Do you not remember, like in the 90s, when somebody would do something sort of controversial and get fired, and they would get like a wee sort of 15 minutes of fame? Like I think the girl who David Beckham is supposed to have cheated on Posh with back in the 90s or 2000s. I can't remember. It was Rebecca something, I think.
Rebecca Lewis.
Rebecca Lewis, that's it. So she was famous just for allegedly having an affair, a brief affair with David Beckham. Next thing you know, she's on the reality show, The Farm, wanking off a cow.
I think
or
it was
maybe
a pig.
horse. Was that a pig?
It's a pig.
All right. Well, that's not so bad.
Yeah, yes, I can see that. I think there is a slight difference in that she did gain kind of big national fame because of this alleged affair, and also, let's face it, she was quite an attractive lady. I don't know if our jobby hero will get such fame.
I mean, I'm just looking at his Twitter profile photograph, and he does look a wee bit like somebody. He looks a wee bit like the guy who plays one of the hobbits in Lord of the Rings. The guy who he was in Heroes. No, he wasn't. He was in Lost as well, and he was in Hetty Wainthorpe Investigates. I can't remember the actor's name. Dominic Moynihan. Is that him?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks a wee bit like him.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe there's a pig that needs whacked off on TV somewhere, and Bobby's phone will be ringing soon.
Maybe. Who knows? Okay. Have you got anything else that you've seen this week then?
Nothing that can top that.
Okay. We'll maybe leave it at that then. 'Cause I've got nothing else. We'll move on from jobbies and wanking pigs. Right. Well, thanks. That was a good. It's a good news week in Scotland this week. So, we can move on now to have a little look at a key piece of Scottish media or culture. And it was your choice this week, Greg. Slightly controversial in that, is it Scottish? Is it not? I think we can agree it probably is. Why don't you tell us what we're going to be having a look at today?
Well, my choice this week, and the reason that we did have a bit of a debate on an earlier episode whether this fell into the sort of Swally criteria, and I'm so glad that we decided that it does, because this is one of my favourite ever films. You know, I'm not putting it up there with the likes of Taxi Driver or like Godfather 2 or anything like that, but personally speaking, it's one of my favourite films, and it's the 1986 fantasy action-adventure film starring Christopher Lambert, Highlander. I'm so glad we got to do it. The synopsis: Connor MacLeod, played by Christopher Lambert, or Christopher Lambert, is born in the Scottish Highlands in the 16th century. After reviving from a fatal wound, MacLeod is found by swordsman Ramirez, played by Big Tam himself, Sean Connery, who explains that they and others were born immortal and invincible unless beheaded. Immortals wage a secret war, fighting each other until the last few remaining will meet at the Gathering to fight for the prize. In 1985, the Gathering is finally happening in New York City, and MacLeod must make sure the prize is not won by his oldest enemy, the murderous Kurgan, played by Clancy Brown. So yeah, so you told me that you hadn't seen this film for a really long time. I had watched it in the summer because it came on Netflix out here in Dubai, in Kuwait at the time, in the Middle East, and I hadn't seen it for ages and ages and ages. And so I was really looking forward to watching it. And so I've watched it again for the Swally, but you hadn't watched it for years. So tell me how much you enjoyed revisiting Highlander, or not.
I really did, actually. Now, I can't quite work out why, but this isn't a film that ever really resonated with me. Now, I remember seeing it for the first time. It's one of those films, I could tell you exactly where I was. I was at my friend Ross's house, and it must have been 10 or something, 9, 10, and I think we were busy playing with, like, Lego or something, and it was on in the background, and yeah, it was alright, but I didn't think it was amazing, and then I think when I was probably about 11, 12, I had quite a big collection of VHS tapes, but it was stuff that I'd recorded off the TV. And I think I had Highlander on one of them, but it never really made it into my rotation of films that I would watch over and over again. That tended to be like RoboCop, Terminator, Aliens, Child's Play,
Total Recall.
Total Recall, yeah, like films like that. So for some reason, Highlander wasn't, and I think I ended up recording over it with something, and probably hadn't watched it since then. It wasn't a film that I had amazingly fond memories of, if that makes sense. I just didn't really have an opinion on it. I'd seen it. So, watching it again, after many, many years for the Swally, I can't quite work out why it didn't resonate with me. Because it is brilliant. It's very good. And I can't understand why I didn't like it, because it's 80s cheese in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I've written down at least, I think, 3 or 4 instances where I'm like, well, they've ripped that off from Terminator, or they've ripped that off from The Karate Kid, they've ripped that off from Rocky 3. There's a lot of instances of that, but it just works. And you can kind of tell that the director, he came from a background of music videos, I think, because it is quite music video-esque in a way. All I can think of is maybe it was the scene set in the past. Maybe that's what didn't kind of resonate with me in a way.
Right.
Because as you know, for some reason, I'm not a big fan of films set in ye olde times. But I am if it's Scotland. And I know that's, but like I can watch Braveheart and I can watch Rob Roy. If this film had been called Knight of the Round Table and it was about an English knight, but it was exactly the same film, I had been like, that's fucking shite. But because it's Highlander and it's set in Scotland, it's fucking ace.
My route to this film. So when I was young, sort of, I don't know. I mean, when this came out, I would have been about 8. There was no way at that age I was getting to watch films like Highlander, for example. I mean, I remember catching the first 20 minutes of Beverly Hills Cop when I was about 7. Like, my mum and my stepdad had rented it. Saw Eddie Murphy on the front. I guess they just missed the 18 rating that it got from the BBFC, and so we watched the first like 20 minutes of it when he's like hanging out the back of the car and there's lots of F-bombs be at the back of the truck, and I was just, there was no way. And so I was in the car with my dad, and he had bought the Queen album A Kind of Magic, and he was playing it, and I found that I liked it. I liked the songs and stuff. And Highlander famously doesn't have like a soundtrack album, but Queen, I've got the credits for doing a lot of the songs and music along with Michael Kamen, the composer, although they didn't work together on it. And a lot of about half the songs, if not more, on A Kind of Magic are from Highlander. And the one song in particular, Gimme the Prize, on the second side has got a lot of dialogue from Highlander in it, mainly from Clancy Brown's character, the Kurgan. And my dad told me in the car, this is from a film called Highlander that he had been to see at the cinema. And he told me what the premise was. In his own way, basically, there's these guys that live forever and they can only be killed if they get their heads chopped off. So from that minute, I was fucking desperate to see Highlander. And as chance would have it, about a year later, my next door neighbour, who I was friends with, for his birthday party, as we used to do, I'm sure you went to birthday parties like this when you were a kid in the 1980s, his mum did some tea for his friends, like some food, some dinner, burgers and stuff, and she hired a few videos from the video shop for us to watch. Mm-hmm. And they weren't as strict next door as our house. So I really pushed really hard for Highlander. So I really wanted to see it. And so that was the first time I watched it. And his big brother, who was a massive Queen fan, came in about halfway through. And he went, it's this Highlander. I went to see this at the cinema. We walked out. It's fucking rubbish. And so they turned it off.
Oh, no.
And so I only saw like half of it that day and I was gutted. But eventually I saw it all. When I was younger, it just captured my imagination. As I got older, I sort of saw it. I can still see it for what it was, but it doesn't make me love it any less. You know what I mean? Like, as you were saying, it's very of its time. The direction of the movie, you can tell that, like you mentioned before, that Russell Macaulay had, his background is directing music videos, and he directed a lot of now classic music videos. He directed most of Duran Duran's hits, like the music videos for those, like Rio, Hungry Like the Wolf. He directed videos for Culture Club, The Human League, Elton John's I'm Still Standing video. And my favourite one, he directed the video for Turning Japanese by the Vapors as well. Wow. Before he went into features. So, that a lot of, like the way that a lot of the sets are lit at certain moments. I mean, there's a scene later on when the Kurgan bursts into Brenda's flat as she's just coming in from work. And, like, she's obviously running away from him in the flat, and some rooms are lit red, some rooms are lit green as she's trying to escape from him. So it's quite stylistic. But the thing that I love the most about the direction are the kind of cutaways from the present to the past when he's thinking about when he was younger and meeting Sean Connery's character for the first time. And my favourite one is when he's looking at the fish tank in his apartment and it kind of fades in and they're on the loch. And I don't think Russell Macaulay gets enough credit for that shot. I think it's fucking brilliant. And I can't really think of anything that it compares to either.
No, I would agree with you on that. I think it is I really appreciated those scenes. Some of the camera work also is incredible. For me, the one that stood out when this film starts, I'm like, okay, let's see what Highlander is all about. First thing it comes up with is the Canon Films logo. I'm like, right, I'm sold. I know I'm getting some good quality 80s shite. If it's Canon or Orion, right, we're in for a wild ride here. It's going to be pretty bad, but it's also going to be quite good. Then you get Sean Connery voiceover, which is, of course, very echoey because he recorded it in a bathroom, which was a quite famous story.
Apparently, whilst practicing a Spanish accent for the film, which he obviously just decided to fucking abandon because it sounds about as Spanish as I do.
Then you have the Queen intro music, and you're like, okay, right, I'm going here. And then, Nikki's fucking sold. It's a wrestling match at Madison Square Gardens with the fabulous Freebirds wrestling. But what instantly got me is the camera work in that scene. It's like it was filmed with a drone, but this is fucking 30 years before drones. How did they get that shot? They go right round Madison Square Gardens. They go up, they zoom in on different things. The shot is incredible how they do that. Yeah. And I would love to know how that was filmed. But yeah, that's an epic kind of opening. And I'm already like, okay, I'm in. I'm sold on this. Let's go.
He must have set up like a rig or something like that, like a rig for the camera to travel on or something, because it can't be on, or maybe it can be maybe it's on like a cable kind of pulley system or something. But yeah, it's brilliant. And do you still get wrestling matches like that now, like 3-on-3?
Yeah, you do get them quite a lot. There was a spate of it in WWE a few years ago. There was a faction called the Shield, and they were 3, and there's the New Day, they're 3, and there was a Wyatt family as well. There was 3 of them. So they used to all kind of face off against each other. And in fact, the blonde wrestlers in the film, they are the fabulous Freebirds. Yeah, and it's Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, Buddy Roberts. Michael Hayes still works for the WWE to this day. He's quite big backstage producer guy. And that's where there's a term that's used in wrestling called the Freebird rule. And it's because of them. Because they were kind of the first to be like a 3-piece. So when they won the tag titles, which obviously there's only 2 belts, they would use what they called the Freebird rule, which meant any 2 of the 3 could defend the belts. Right. And to this day, they still do that. So like the New Day, there's 3 members of that. And if they hold the tag team championships, they use the Freebird rule, which means you can have any 2 of the 3 defending the titles, effectively, or wrestling. So yeah, little wrestling geek out there. So yes, you do still get 3 men tag team matches. But yeah, it's great. Fantastic opening, good start. And then, of course, you get shady Connor sitting there looking very mysterious, and then he buggers off down to the car park.
No, Connor sitting there with his personal lighting
Yeah. And he's the only person that's not up on their feet and enjoying the match. He's just sitting there looking pretty glum.
I love some of those those crowd reactions to the wrestling match at the beginning. You know, I don't know if they've just been told, you know, just enjoy the wrestling and react how you would react and we'll film it, or if they've been told, you know, get really excited about it. Because when when one of the Freebirds sort of kind of takes off his robe up in the turnbuckle and sticks his tongue out and starts like shouldering out his robe, like the way that some of the women react, you're like, wait a minute, you know, I know he's a wrestler, but he's a fat cunt. You know, get excited about it. You know?
Would this be his robe that has the Confederate flag on the back of it?
Exactly. in Manhattan, you know. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean the film just. And again, I think it speaks to Russell Macaulay's sort of pedigree as a music video director, because like the whole film does move quite quickly. You know, it's a fairly compact. I think it's about an hour and 40 minutes or something. There's, you know, the exposition that needs to happen is pretty quick, and you go right in from the wrestling to him meeting Fazil, like a fellow immortal, who's played by the British stuntman. Peter Diamond, who he did a lot of stunts in the original Star Wars trilogy. Most famously, he's the Tusken Raider who tries to attack, or who does attack rather, Luke Skywalker in the first Star Wars movie. And I think you're supposed to get the impression that MacLeod and Fazil are friendly, and MacLeod's like, oh wait a minute, and then Fazil just like starts sword fighting with him, but he's still got his like trench coat over one arm when he starts fighting with him, and he's still got his sunglasses on. And I was thinking that is such a 1980s thing to have to keep for him to have his sunglasses on. But then I see why they've made the decision to keep the shades on him to begin with, because it gives Russ Macaulay an excuse to have that great shot when the sunglasses have been knocked off and you see Fazil kind of running between the cars and the reflection. I'm like, all right, that's why we made that choice. And then it's just excitement. There's like fighting on car bonnets. The sprinklers go off. Fazil, when MacLeod loses his sword and he's searching for it under the cars, Fazil starts like backflipping for like fucking no reason other than the fact that it looks cool as fuck.
Yeah, that's one of the... There's two things in this scene that I'm like, really? The backflips. Is there any need? Is that not going to slow you down a bit? Are you not faster just running rather than doing backflips? The second thing I had was, okay, so we've just seen Connor sitting watching the wrestling in Madison Square Gardens, and he's kind of slouched down in his chair. And then he goes down to the car park, and then he pulls out this massive fucking sword out of his duster. Where's that been when he's been slouched in the seat? Yeah, it must have been poking somewhere. Or very strange. I don't know how he managed to conceal that. Anyway, obviously we can, it's magic, so we can sort of gloss over that. But yeah, the backflips did make me laugh quite a bit. Like, really, what's the point of that? Apart from the fact that, yeah, it does look quite cool, I suppose.
You know, for years and years, like before the advent of IMDb and the internet and everything, I always thought that the character of Fazil, I thought that was a cameo by Queen drummer Roger Taylor.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, now you mention it, I thought you were going to say Rutger Hauer for a second there, but yeah, Roger Taylor would be. Yeah, I could see that.
There's a little resemblance.
Yeah.
You know, not. I guess it's, you know, but it's when I was a lot younger. We need to talk about Christopher Lambert for a minute. So he was pretty hot property at this time in the mid '80s. He had just done the Tarzan film. Apparently, and I don't know if this could be a bit loose internet sort of research. It might be true, it might not be, but apparently he had to learn to speak English for Highlander. So Tarzan didn't require him to speak any English. Now, I always thought that Tarzan film was a flop and had been slammed, but apparently it was either nominated for or won 3 Oscars. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it a couple of times. I haven't seen it I haven't seen it for fucking years, mate, well over 20 years. I know Andy McDowell's in it. She plays Jane and has her English accent dubbed because she was so bad by another actress. I remember seeing it maybe when I was a teenager and thinking this isn't very good, but I might have to go back and watch it again. But yeah, so Christopher Lambert, he was born in New York, but he grew up in France. He had done some French films in the late 1970s, early 80s, Le Bas du Téléphone being one of them, before he got the job as Tarzan. Apparently when Russell Macaulay saw him, the picture of him as Tarzan, he was like, who the fuck's that? I mean, that's what I want in my film. So yeah, he did like, he would do like 4 hours of like dialect and voice coaching in the morning to help him realise that amazing Scottish accent like he does. But I think we've got to give him a bit of a break, because if that's true and he's learned English, or he's learned to speak English sort of capably for the movie, plus have to do like try and do a Scottish accent, I think we can let him off.
There are a couple of points where it does sound Scottish-ish, but not really. But I think they do quite a good way of explaining it, almost.
Yeah.
When he kind of gets arrested, so to speak, and the cop does say to him, "You talk funny, where are you from?" And he responds, lots of places. You have to remember, because he's been living for, 300, 400 years?
Yeah.
So he's probably picked up a bit of an accent from somewhere else.
I am Connor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. I was born in 1518 in the village of Glenfinnan on the shores of Loch Shiel. And I am immortal.
Yeah, you're right. It makes more sense in the kind of present day scenes than it does when he's thinking.
Yeah,
it does when he's thinking back to like his early life in Scotland. He also has a condition called myopia, which makes him very nearsighted, and apparently that was one of the reasons he got. That's one of the reasons he got cast in Tarzan, because he looks quite good when he's staring into the distance, but his condition sort of forces him to stare into the distance, because obviously Tarzan doesn't wear glasses. And when he was doing the sword fighting scenes, which he trained with a guy, I forget the guy's name, but he was also a stuntman. He was a stunt double for, I've got him here, his name is Bob Anderson. And he had been a Darth Vader stunt double in the original Star Wars franchise. So he would do he'd do his 4 hours of dialect coaching, and he would do 2 hours of sword fighting practice. So considering that this is a film that I can't imagine that. Well, first of all, you mentioned already it was a canon film, so they were sort of notorious for every kind of decent film they put out, there was like a Superman 4. Do you know what I mean? So I guess the expectations weren't that high, but he's fucking thrown himself into it, and I actually think I was watching him when I watched the movie again for the podcast, and when I watched it in the summer, he's got there's a bit of a magnetism to him. He's quite charming in the character. When he does those little laughs, like when I think back towards the fight toward the end of the film, like the last fight with the Kurgan, and Brenda kind of helps him out by hitting the Kurgan over the back with a pole, and then he jumps in with his sword, and he does that funny wee laugh, and then says, what, he sort of smiles at her and says, "What kept you?" or something like that. And he's got a few wee moments like that where he's you kind of feel like for all the fact that he's supposed to be playing this kind of tortured immortal man who obviously he's had his heart broken when his first wife he's outlived his first wife back in the old days and everything. He is still having a bit of fun with the character. I think he's really good in it, and I think his performance is aged quite well, personally speaking, better than some of the other performances in the movie. What do you think?
Yeah, he does. I did like his performance, and I did feel an affection towards Connor. I don't know, you're saying some of the other performances in the film, I thought it was all pretty good. There wasn't really anything that I would have said was a bad performance as such.
I don't think there's any bad performances, but there are some performances which haven't aged as well, like a lot of the kind of police characters.
Yeah.
So like the inspector, or the uniformed policeman who arrests him outside Madison Square Garden, Garfield, don't move, pal, don't even breathe, all these sort of like real kind of 80s stereotypical kind of police characters. And Roxanne Hart, who plays Brenda, I mean, she's not really, I think this is like her sort of highest profile film role I mean, the sort of wisest choice she made was not coming back for the sequel because it's fucking terrible. But she was in Chicago Hope, sort of quite a popular American hospital drama for a few years. But her performance as the kind of the forensic scientist who just happens also to be an expert on antique swords and metallurgy. It's that all that's just a wee bit kind of contrived.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that, and I think it is. A part of me was a bit like, really, when she's going to the car park with a metal detector to try and find these fragments of sword, but yet she doesn't pick up on the actual sword, which Connor has very secretly hidden in the roof of the car park. That's a great hiding place. No one will ever suspect, or no one will look there. But yeah, she didn't find it, so. And he got it back eventually anyway. Yeah, so I could see that in terms of her character. Maybe not quite as rounded, but yeah, I thought she was quite good. She a very attractive woman as well, which always helps in terms of an 80s film. But yeah, maybe not the most well-rounded character.
Do you think she's more attractive than Bonnie Heather?
Yeah. Heather also a very nice lady, but yeah, I'd pick Brenda over Heather.
I was reading a bit about Bonnie Heather today. She's played by Beattie Edney, who is the daughter of famous British actress Sylvia Sims, and she's actually quite a prolific British TV actress. She's been in all sorts. Most recently in Poldark, where she lashed out at the Poldark producers because they only invited the kind of young members of the cast to the premiere of the last season, and I'm just going to keep calling her Bonnie Heather. She's now 56, but anyway. But I always preferred her to Brenda when I was younger. I always thought she was nicer. She's got something quite sexy about her. But her Scottish accent's not great. It's maybe better than Big Tam's Spanish accent.
Well, to speak about Big Tam, he comes swanning in dressed like a 1970s pimp in his big peacock garb.
Greetings. I am Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, Chief Metallurgist to King Charles V of Spain, and I'm at your service.
Which is fantastic. And it's funny, you think Highlander, obviously you first of all think Christopher Lambert, then you think Sean Connery. He's only in it for 10 minutes. But you do associate Highlander with him a lot. And I think he shot all of his scenes in a week. And he had a bet with the director that he could get it all done in a week. And I think it kind of shows, because it does go along at quite a pace. But
he was only hired for 3 days' work, and he was offered half $500,000 for 3 days' work, but he had a clause in his contract where he would earn an extra $500,000 for any days beyond the 3 days that he'd agreed to do. So one of the cameras broke down, which ended up with a 2-day delay, and he ended up getting $1 million bonus. Canny Scotsman, Big Tam.
He is great at it. I do like he's just, I know it's a trope in sort of saying that he's just playing Sean Connery, but he is. It's the accent, and also it's the kind of, he's got a couple of really funny kind of quips or lines that you would almost associate with like James Bond, or it's just a Sean Connery performance. And I don't know why. Why would you cast him as an Egyptian Spaniard? When it's Sean Connery, possibly the most famous Scotsman in the world at the time. Why don't you just say he's from Scotland and then he can keep his accent? You can still dress him like a pimp. You can say he's lived in Egypt, he's lived in Spain. He's immortal, so he's been around a bit. Obviously he spent time in Japan because he mentions his, old Japanese wife and he has the Japanese sword. But why don't you just make him Scottish? It's just bizarre.
I'm not sure why. But do you think that without Sean Connery in that role, the movie loses a bit of credibility?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would, especially at that time. 1986, it's a canon film. Okay, as you say, Christophe Lambert kind of off the back of Tarzan maybe had a bit of box office. I think the Queen soundtrack as well, but I think you need that Sean Connery name in there. Sean Connery is a name that you do associate very much so in terms of Highlander. So yeah, I think it needed the gravitas of having him in there.
I mean, the scenes with him and Christopher Lambert are probably the best scenes in the whole movie. When he's doing his training, like the scene on the boat that we mentioned before, when Sean Connery asks, I think MacLeod calls Ramirez a haggis, and Big Ramirez is, well, what's a haggis? And MacLeod describes the haggis to him, and he's like, what do you do with it? He's like, you eat it. He's like, oh, how revolting. You know, it's like kind of back and forth between them.
You look like a woman, you stupid haggis.
Haggis? What is haggis?
Sheep's stomach stuffed with meat and barley.
And what do you do with it?
You eat it. How revolting.
And even the more sort of sincere moments, you know, particularly when Ramirez is telling MacLeod why he should leave Heather, because he can't give her children, and, you know, she will obviously die before him, and it's heartbreaking. He's been through it, blah blah blah. You know, they're I think without those scenes, without Big Tam in that role, it would be a completely forgettable, well, potentially a completely forgettable movie.
Yeah, they are very nice. I agree with you. It's very heartfelt, the speech that he gives about the three wives that he's had and how he's, you know, never really gotten over them. Yes, you definitely need that. Now, the issue I have with some of the scenes are, as I mentioned before, there's quite a few things that I'm like, well, you've just stolen that from so-and-so. So, okay, you have the blue lightning and stuff in the car park, etc. Well, obviously, they've stolen that from Terminator. That's fine. Terminator doesn't own blue lightning, but they did kind of set the trend there. So then you have this little sort of scenes with Sean and Connor, of course. So you have the boat training, which he falls in, ha 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 ha. So the director had obviously watched The Karate Kid when he was kind of preparing that, because it's the exact same as Daniel and Mr. Miyagi.
Of course, yeah.
Then, of course, you get the training montage, and they're racing each other on the beach, just like Apollo and Rocky in Rocky 3, which came out in 1982. So the director's obviously watched The Karate Kid and watched Rocky 3 and thought, yeah, I'm having some of that. This is going to be in Highlander. I kind of, joking in terms of that, but it does strike me as they have just lifted, when I'm watching it, I'm just like, well, they've stolen that from there. They've stolen that from there. So I'm sure it wasn't intentional.
Well, I'm sure it probably was.
Yeah, probably was, actually, yeah.
And then, of course, you got to talk about Clancy Brown, because, I mean, and I feel a wee bit sorry for Clancy Brown in this part, because it's a pretty good part, but equally, it's a bit of an 80s sort of stereotype role. And he's a much better actor than that. And I think that's the only thing that doesn't make the part of the Kurgan just ridiculous. It's because he's such a fucking great actor. I mean, it is quite a ridiculous part anyway, but his portrayal of it kind of brings it sort of takes it somewhere where it fits with the movie. But apparently, the screenwriter, the script was written by a guy called Gregory Wyden. He actually wrote it when he was still at UCLA at college, and he got paid $200,000 for it. But it was going to be quite different. So he was going to have Connor as a much more serious and kind of grim character because of all these years of violence and loss. He was going to have had 37 children and have sons that were in their mid-50s and all that kind of stuff, and they would see him revealed as an immortal. I don't know what was supposed to have happened to his family from his other wives and stuff, but for the role of the Kurgan, the screenwriter wanted to make it a much more complex character, a much more tortured character. So what he says is, he said the Kurgan was the thing that was the most different about my screenplay. He was much more tortured. The Kurgan in Highlander is pretty much like a sort of Freddy Krueger type character. He's like a kind of cackling psychopath.
Oh.
He says, I envisioned him as a guy who loses everything over time. The only thing he could hold on to give him a reason to get up in the morning was to finish this thing and finish it with our guy, who's MacLeod. It was more about that. It was just a reason to get up in the morning. Otherwise, what's the point? Everything is impermanent. Everything is lost. That made him much more serious in a weird way, a sort of sympathetic bad guy. They said that Clancy Brown had similar thoughts about the Kurgan, and he wanted to make him a lot more complex and interesting by dressing him in a sort of suit and disguising the fact that he's such a villain, rather than have him wear these big outlandish kind of biker jackets with one sleeve missing and the safety pins and his neck scar and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I would quite like to see that version of the film, I think. Obviously, it's never been made, but it would be quite an interesting way to take it. I mean, I know that they spun Highlander off into like a TV show that I never ever watched, but I think there's probably a bit more of that type of villain in the TV show than just the sort of savage kind of warrior that Clancy Brown ends up playing.
I like the Clancy Brown as Kurgan. He is fantastic. And I wondered, because they do mention that the Kurgan descended from Russians. So is that a kind of Cold War dig? You know, at that time, the Russians were very much the enemy in kind of everything. So was that maybe a little dig there at the Russians? But yeah, he's great, and I really like. I'll be honest, he's probably my favorite character in the film in terms of the character development. Starts off as almost like a kind of Terminator-esque vibe of this quiet killer. I mean, he's not very good with a broadsword. I can say that he's pretty bad with it in terms of his fighting ability. But it's when the character kind of comes to life, of course. It's almost it's kind of a change in the film, and he becomes more of a comedic character towards the end. And it starts, obviously, I think, in the hotel when the guy in the hotel says that, I heard you were kinky with candy, and he has kind of like a little smirk. And then it's the scene in the church, and I don't know, I presume it is meant to be quite comedic, but it's hilarious. The interaction between him and Connor in that church, when he says, "Oh, you've had a haircut." He's like, "Yeah, thanks." I'm in disguise. And when he's interacting with the nuns and wishing them a happy Halloween, and the character just comes to life for me there, and I think it's hilarious. And I do love even the opening part, really, when you meet the Kurgan in the 80s, and he's just cruising around listening to Queen. You're like, okay, right. Okay, you're this kind of immortal killer, and you're just cruising around listening to Queen. Great.
Did you have him down as more of maybe like a kind of Judas Priest fan or Megadeth?
Well, that was my thought of, I think he would be listening to harder stuff than Queen. You know, I would have thought at the time it would have been like Iron Maiden or, as you say, probably Megadeth. Yeah, I think, to be fair, some of the Queen songs on the soundtrack are very hard Queen. I think it's quite heavy for some Queen tracks, and very good. But yeah, I just thought would he be driving around listening to Queen? Maybe. Don't know. I mean, Connor drives around listening to Queen as well. So obviously just a big, very popular band in New York at the time.
Well, that was quite a popular album. Yeah, even my dad bought it. Normally he would just wait for somebody to burn him a copy, or he would rent the tape from the library and make his own copy. Remember, you could do that. You could rent like CDs and stuff in the library and just make copies. That's what my dad used to do that. But I mean that album. I mean that was. I mean I was quite a big Queen fan at one point in my life when I was a lot younger. These days I'm more of a casual sort of Queen fan. But that album was like my introduction to them, really. And it's quite a weird album because the first song, One Vision, is off another movie. It's off Iron Eagle. Remember, right? The sort of Top Gun type movie. And then all but maybe one or two songs on the album are on the Highlander soundtrack. So you've got 1 Year of Love, which is playing when Brenda and Connor meet in the bar. Obviously, you got Who Wants to Live Forever, which is like a massive Queen hit in its own right, particularly because of the way it's been attached to the sort of premature death of Freddie Mercury in some ways. You've got A Kind of Magic, obviously, which is a massive song in its own right. And then you got there's Princess of the Universe, Give Me the Prize, Don't Lose Your Head. And then the only other song that I can remember off the album, which isn't on Highlander, is Friends Will Be Friends, which is a fucking really shit, limp-wristed fucking song. Even for Queen, who quite a sentimental band, depending on whose song it was. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I remember like at one point in my life, I knew every word to every song on that A Kind of Magic album. And I used to chuckle every time Freddie Mercury said at the end of One Vision, instead of saying "Give me one vision," he says "Give me fried chicken." So it was funny in the mid-80s. It's maybe lost a bit of its appeal now. But no, I think we should talk about some of the other cast members. There's Celia Imrie, Victoria Woods. You know, she's been in a lot of stuff as an actress, but she's probably most famous for being a popular collaborator with Victoria Woods. There's obviously Swally. Is this the first time we've had James Cosmo?
It is,
Swally?
yeah.
I think it might be,
is
right?
the first time.
Yes. So even though we've got an award named after him, this is his Swally debut as Angus MacLeod, Connor's cousin. And then Billy Hartman, who plays Dougal, or Dougal, as Connor calls him, who, the only other thing he's been in, he was in Emmerdale Farm for years as Terry.
I never realised he was Scottish.
Neither did I. Doing a cracking Yorkshire accent.
I used to watch Emmerdale when Terry was in it, and I genuinely never realised that he was Scottish. I'm amazed at that.
And then you got another prolific British actor, Hugh Quashie, who plays Castigear, the sort of African immortal that Connor meets in Central Park, who he's friends with. He ends up being dispatched by the Kurgan in an alley in New York. But yeah, I mean, Hugh Quashie's been. I mean, his IMDb is as long as my arm. The amount of credits that he's got on there. And then you mentioned Candy earlier, the sort of very brief appearance. The prostitute that the Kurgan hires when he's and that's what's really weird. She walks into the room while he's like swinging his sword about, and she's just like, "Hiya, I'm Candy." She's played by an actress called Corinne Russell, who is actually a British former Page 3 model. As far as I know, as far as I can tell, this is her only acting credit.
I have to bring up the scene, of course, where Kurgan is using his broadsword in the hotel room. Now, it's quite impressive the way it's packed. That it's effectively like a sniper rifle, that he's packed it all in this foam case and he assembles it and very carefully puts it all together. Now, maybe it's just a reaction, but if you've been doing that for hundreds of years, when you've assembled your sword, which you probably use quite a lot, and he kind of pushes the button and the spikes come out at the side, and he flinches. You wouldn't flinch. You'd know it's coming, so you wouldn't flinch. That was one bit. I was like, Clancy, you obviously couldn't help having a little flinch there, but Kurgan wouldn't flinch at that.
And some of the exercises that he's doing as well are quite strange. The one that springs to mind is when he's got the sword sort of upside down, so the kind of point of the sword is into the floor, and he's kind of like whacking the handle back and forth between his forearms. That's not weird. We did that for. So there was a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about Highlander. And again, this is maybe a bit of a one of these sort of 80s tropes, but a guy's just been found in the car park of Madison Square Garden. He's been decapitated. Now, I imagine that it takes some force to whip someone's head off clean off their shoulders. Quite a lot of levity amongst the attending policemen, you know. One joke particularly being, "So what do you think the cause of death was, Lieutenant? Ho, ho, ho. People are turning up with snacks." You know what I mean? And the other one is the technology that seems to be available to the NYPD in the mid-80s, particularly the sort of signature analyzer thing when Brenda works out that Russell Nash, who's Connor MacLeod's 1985 alias, has been around for all these years because they've got all these signatures, and this computer is able to take a wee bit of each signature and say, yeah, this is the same guy.
Yeah, it's lucky that all his aliases have the same letters that can make up his name. Yeah, I was really impressed with that technology. And I'm like, wow, did this exist at the time? Don't know.
I don't know if that exists now, to be honest.
Oh, no, it must exist now in terms of if you have like handwriting recognition and stuff. And I'm pretty sure something like that would exist nowadays. But yeah, it was quite impressive. But then it's a fantasy film at the end of the day, mate. I mean, it had RoboCop. That's not realistic technology for the time, is it?
No,
so,
but it was set in the future at the time, so they could get away with it. Highlander's set in the present day 1985. I mean, you know, so Connor MacLeod has been around all these years. He's never been fingerprinted once.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a very valid point, actually. So yeah, he's never been arrested. I mean, obviously he does in the opening of the film. So yeah, it's a good point. He's never actually been in trouble in all the years that he's been alive.
Despite having like duels on Boston Common. That's a good scene. I like that scene.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was good. It was a nice little kind of humorous break almost of into the film, and I guess it was just to show that a different time that Connor had lived in as well. So
like, this my other thing I was going to ask you, right? So you're invited over. So you're an immortal, right? You're invited over for dinner at a nice lady's house. You bring her a bottle of 200-year-old brandy, right? And you pour her a measure, and you're like, this brandy was bottled in like 17 whatever, and her only reaction is, oh, that's old. That bottle of brandy is worth thousands of dollars. He's brought it on the first date, and all she can say is, oh, that's old. I'd be pouring her measure back into the bottle and telling her to get to fuck. That was her reaction.
You have to remember as well, this is the first date, as you say. Now, she invites Connor round. He comes round. All she knows up to this point really is that he was arrested in his car park where a beheaded corpse was found. He's the only suspect, really, and that's all she really knows about him. But she'll invite him into her apartment and she'll leave him to have a snoop around while she goes and changes her earrings. And
she goes and puts on these shards of glass on her ears.
And he's having a good snoop around, and so he finds the tape recorder hidden inside the piano and sees the cop waiting outside. So, he's got time to have a good look around there. But she's very okay with just leaving him to do whatever he wants in the house.
The other thing I was going to ask you, so Heather, when she dies, bearing in mind that this is the 1700s, how do you think she was? Like 40, 45, something like that?
That's a good point, because I thought she was meant to look about, probably about 60, mid to late 60s, but that's a very good point. Life expectancy back then was probably about 40 odd.
Yeah.
So, I never thought about that. Very good point. Don't know.
The other thing that I took a bit of issue with in that scene is she asks Connor as she's slipping away where they are. Where are we, Connor? Now, he's vague as fuck. He's like, we're in the Highlands. We're in the Highlands. Where in the Highlands? Why not just set it some, even if you make it up? Like, obviously, Glenfinnan, where he's supposed to come from, is a made up place. But he does mention that it's near the shores of Loch Shiel, which is a real place. And they use the castle of Elandonan and the bridge, so when the MacLeods are going off to battle, that's the bridge at Elandonan. So they have taken, although it's not, they don't refer to it as that right enough, but they have put a bit of kind of geographical exposition in there. And then as his wife's dying, it's just like, we're in the Highlands. Like, the Highlands is not this massive part of Scotland with lots of different little villages and towns. Well, maybe not towns, but certainly locales in it. Just lazy writing.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe they didn't want to go into too much detail of getting somewhere else.
Maybe Jimmy Savile had built his house up there by that point, and they were like, "Fuck it, just say the Highlands." In case Jimmy turns up to give us like some advice, like he did on Complicity, and then my last point is about the Kurgan.
Yeah,
he's always falling off things. In the film, he's fucking falling off things all the time. He falls off of sort of Connor's little kind of tower house inside twice.
Yeah.
Once when Ramirez knocks him down, and then second time after he's been electrocuted. He falls off the Silver Cup sign. He falls through the ceiling. It's fucking clumsy.
That was my other, that's blatantly ripped off from moment, is the final fight between the Connor and Kurgan. And it's when the window backdrop is behind them and they're fighting. It's like, it's just fucking Return of the Jedi. You've stolen that from there. Interesting. Did you know about the swords and how they got the sparks when they're fighting? The sparks come off the swords.
I imagine they put like something on them, like some kind of resin or something, or magnesium or something like
that. No, they went down a different route there. One of them, they both had car batteries wired to the swords. One had a positive and one had a negative, like wired up. And as they were fighting, obviously when the positive and negative charges hit, sparks fly. So But they had to limit the takes to like 2 or 3 minutes at a time because the swords were getting so hot with the car batteries. So they had each of the actors had like a wire running up their sleeve and connected to a car battery. So that's how they achieved the sparks in those scenes. They weren't put in with post-production or anything. They actually had car batteries to go with that.
And my very, very last point, I think, before we go on to the categories is, so the prize that they're fighting for, worth fighting for? So basically, if you concentrate really hard, you know what everybody in the world is thinking. What's the other one? Finally, you get your mortality, so maybe that's worth it because if you've lived for a long time, you haven't been able to have kids. I know you can. I think it said that you could have children now in the 80s with Brenda if he wants. Although according to Highlander 2, that never happened. But no, I mean, a bit of a shit prize. And what's the Kurgan going to do with the prize? Just know what we're all thinking.
Does Ramirez not say that if the Kurgan was to get it, it would be a very different sort of place, the world. It would be dangerous. So I don't know. Is that effectively you can do kind of whatever you want? So
well, it's a bit sort of godlike, isn't it? If you know what everyone's thinking, but you got to concentrate and you can hear people's thoughts and.
But I presumed that Connor has chosen to become mortal so that he can have kids with Brenda. But the Kurgan probably wouldn't have. I don't know.
It's all a bit ambiguous, isn't it?
It is. And I don't know. I don't think I'm going to bother with the sequels because I've heard that they are pretty terrible. But of course, 2 is a direct continuation from 1. And 3 is a direct continuation from 1 because it effectively wipes out the second film because they've said shite.
Well, it is shite. And in the second film, it completely subverts the kind of mythology of the first film by saying that all the immortals are actually aliens from the planet Zeist.
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff. And just, I mean, it was and it's the same director. So you would have thought, I would have thought that he'd been a bit more emotionally attached to the storyline of the first one. And done something a bit more continual,
I say, I read the synopsis of 2 and 3. Immediately, 2, I was like, that sounds fucking shit. 3, I was like, that sounds quite interesting, maybe. It might be worth a watch. I don't know. Probably won't bother, but...
I think does 3 not set up the TV show? Or is 3 the one with Mario Van Peebles in it?
Yeah, 3's the one with Mario Van Peebles, yeah. There is
I've never seen it.
4th one, I think, which is... It has the guy from the TV show, who is he Duncan MacLeod?
Yes.
Because it's Connor's cousin or something, and they're both in.
It's the actor Adrian Paul.
Yeah, I never really watched the TV show, but I think it was like a kind of like Monster of the Week type show where, the Highlander would sort of visit a town and battle some sort of demon, a bit like Buffy the Vampire Slayer type thing or that type of thing. So never really got round to seeing that, unfortunately.
I saw 2 at the cinema and I was excited to see it. So it came out when I was 12, and by this point I'd seen Highlander a few times. And my dad, as I mentioned, was a big fan of the first film too. So he said, I was going to Glasgow for the weekend, and he said, we'll go and see Highlander 2. And I said, yeah, but Dad, it's a 15. And he said, you'll be all right. You're quite tall. So I did get in to see it. First 15 I ever get into. Could not wait to see it. And it is, even as 12 years old, I thought, this is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I mean, there's a ridiculous scene in it where, so MacLeod has aged, right? Because he's mortal now. And 2 immortals are sent from the planet they come from to kill him. And just before that happens, this woman approaches him because she is like an environmentalist. He has been involved in this project that has built this big barrier around the world to replace the ozone layer, which is now like environmentally unfriendly and stuff. So she's approached him for his help. No sooner has she approached him and spoken to him for a few minutes that he's attacked. He manages to kill one of the guys, so he absorbs his power, becomes young again, kills the other guy. She appears back again, and he rattles her right there, next to a bin. It's just like, wait a minute,
I think it is something that is ripe for a reboot or a remake, and I think they have been trying, but it's just not getting off the ground. And it's the guy that directed John Wick, I think, that's on board. And I did read that one of my favourites, Dave Bautista, had kind of signed on to play the Kurgan, but
Oh, really?
it was from a couple of years ago, so I don't know if he would still be attached to it now. But
Maybe.
I think, it's ripe for bringing it up to date, having a little reboot or remake.
Yeah, they could do. I mean, you've had sort of kind of Game of Thrones, which is, I guess, it's got a few things in common. Kind of fantasy. There's Outlander as well. It kind of got a couple of things in common with Highlander. So I suppose, it's there's maybe some mileage in a remake around about now.
One thing that I thought was quite amusing, did you know that Christopher Lambert and Clancy Brown played the same character in different iterations, just a year apart from each other?
I did not know that.
No?
What was the character? No.
Raiden from Mortal Kombat.
Ah.
Christophe Lambert played him in the 1995 film, and in 1996 there was a kind of like a manga cartoon of Mortal Kombat, and Clancy Brown played Raiden in it.
I did read that today, but I didn't make the connection. Because Clancy Brown has got hundreds of... I mean, he's got quite a distinctive voice. And he's got hundreds of voice parts and cartoons. Like, he's done loads of DC stuff, like Lex Luthor. He's done Marvel stuff. But I think probably his most famous and most enduring voice is as Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob SquarePants. He's been doing that for years. And I had never ever watched SpongeBob SquarePants because I was always, when that came out, I was too old for cartoons. But my children, when they were younger, liked it, and I watched a few episodes, and it is often incredibly funny. SpongeBob SquarePants, often. I mean, it's not like in the vein of like Family Guy or Archer or anything like that. It is done for kids, but it's just it's often very, very funny. You don't have to watch it. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I probably won't bother.
So shall we put Highlander through the categories?
Oh yes, let's do that then. Okay.
So, archetypal Scottish moment. What did you have?
Where do you start? It's dripping in it. I think it has to be the haggis mentions and the talking about haggis a lot and him calling Ramirez a haggis. That's what I had for that. What about yourself?
I had Dougal headbutting Connor 3 times when they're lynching him. Yeah, there's something very Scottish about headbutting somebody who can't fight back.
That's fair enough, yeah. Or is it about Angus admitting that he pees his kilt?
He pees his kilt all the time.
Yeah. That was another kind of thing.
It was a good one as well.
Yeah.
So the Sean Connery Who Won the Movie Award, also known as the Who Got to Go Home and Fuck the Prom Queen Award.
Now, I debated this because I think Tam is the obvious answer, really, in terms of he's only in it for 10 minutes and he kind of steals a lot of the film. It's what people remember. But I'm tempted to give it to Clancy Brown. As Kurgan. I really liked him. I thought he was great. So I'm always tempted to give it to him. But yeah, I think it has to go to Sean Connery as Ramirez.
I don't know. I'm going to be controversial and give it to Christopher Lambert. I think because I mean, just rewatching it again the other day, I thought I really like his performance. I mentioned all the reasons why earlier, but I think I would give him that award. I mean, there's sort of two roles that kind of sort of set Sean Connery up a little bit in the 80s as playing the kind of mentor to a younger cast. I think there's The Name of the Rose, the one with Christian Slater when he plays the monk, and there's this one which sort of leads him to perhaps the most famous example of that type of character in The Untouchables.
Yeah,
as the mentor to Kevin Costner. But like to your point, although he's not in the film for very long, he is a massive part of the film. So I would probably... So I think Sean would be my runner-up.
And he's got the first line of the film because he does the voiceover at the beginning. Then does he have the last line because he's got the voiceover at the end?
Yeah. I think you kind of have to assume that he's sort of in MacLeod's head at the end, telling him that men's dreams and hopes are his to know and all this. And so although he doesn't have as much screen time as the rest of the kind of principal cast, his presence is felt from start to finish.
True.
So the James Cosmo Award for being in everything Scottish, I think, goes to James Cosmo.
Yes, a worthy winner, definitely. I mean, yes, because it is everything Scottish. Had it been for just being in everything, I'd probably give it to Clancy Brown, because he's been in so much. But it has to be Scottish, so yes. Congratulations, James. You've won your own award.
That's James on the Swally tally now as well. He's got an appearance on there. I'm sure he'll have many more by the time we're finished.
I'm sure he will.
The most Taggart appearances go to James Cosmo.
Ah, what a surprise.
Yeah. Ewan McGregor Award for gratuitous nudity. There's not really there's a sex scene with Brenda and MacLeod.
Yeah, you see a bit of nipple.
We'll give it to Brenda then, will we? Give it to Roxanne.
Well, yeah, you see her bottom and a bit of nipple as well. So, yeah, I think you have to give it to her.
The Jake McQuillan Your Tease Out Award for violent moment. I guess it's the Marine, isn't it, that gets impaled after he machine guns the Kurgan.
Yeah, that is quite a... Well, he doesn't die, but it's, most violent moment. It is quite a nasty moment. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree and give it to you. Yeah, to that.
There's also the scene which I don't know if I'd kind of forgotten about it as much, but you know when the Kurgan kidnaps Brenda and they're driving through the streets of New York and he starts running people over.
Yeah.
Pretty violent moment there too.
Yeah, certainly is. Must have inspired Carmageddon in terms of the...
No, I think Carmageddon is Death Race 2000, isn't it?
Oh, of course, yes. You're right there.
And then what was your favourite scene?
Genuinely, my favourite scene is Connor and the Kurgan in the church. The dialogue there. I keep your action scenes. I just like the banter between the two, and I thought it was very funny and quite natural as well. And it was just nice to see them almost... because they're in a church, kind of sacred place, can't do anything, so it was just nice to see them having a bit of banter before not trying to kill each other.
Yeah, I mean, the Kurgan almost ruins the banter by revealing that he raped Bonnie Heller.
Yes, that does put a slight dampener on the humour element there. I did sort of think, oh, you bastard. But yeah, that wasn't not so nice.
My favourite scene is the scene on the boat. Like from start to finish, I mentioned earlier, they kind of cut away from the fish tank to Connor and Ramirez on the boat. But I'm going to give a runner-up prize to the scene at the wrestling in the beginning. Not so much for the wrestling, because I'm sure you and I have both seen much, much better wrestling, but I just, like you, I just love the way it's shot. You know, with the camera circling the arena and everything. I think it's really good. So, there can be only one. Unfortunately, there was more than one. They did about another 4 or 5 Highlander films. They probably should have stopped at one. I've enjoyed talking about it. What's your choice for next episode 17?
I've really struggled this time. I don't know why. I've always got something in my mind. First of all, I should say thank you very much for picking Highlander, and it was a joy to watch it after so many years and to kind of get back into it. And I don't think I'll leave it as long next time. I think it could be added to the rotation of films that I might chuck on in the background if I'm doing something. Do you know what I mean? You always have those kind of films, so I might put it into there. But yes, I struggled for next time. I changed my mind about 3 or 4 times, and I couldn't decide what to do. And then I thought, when this episode goes out, it'll be a couple of days before my birthday. And when we record our next episode, it will probably be around about my birthday. And it's a big one. I'm going to be 40. So you can send any gift vouchers to cultureswally@gmail.com and any birthday wishes to our socials. So it led me to think about big birthdays. And you have your 40th, you have your 21st, you have your 18th, and you have your sweet 16th. So next time I'd like to do the 2002 Ken Loach film, Sweet 16.
Brilliant. I remember seeing that at the cinema. And I'm not sure if I've seen it since. I might have seen it once or maybe since then. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Brilliant.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for listening, everyone. If you would like to get in touch with us on any news items that you've seen or anything you would like us to review and look at, then you can email us on cultureswally@gmail.com. And why don't you follow us on Instagram @cultureswallypod or follow us on Twitter. We're not very active on there. We'll need to sort that out @swallypod. So, thank you very much for listening, everyone, and thanks very much for making me rewatch Highlander, Greg. thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. Okay, until next time, we'll speak to you
Until
later.
next time. All right.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.